You know, when I think about David Shane and the Whistler Award, it's a perfect match. He embodies a remarkable, selfless, humble, brilliant, tireless force in the development of our community in so many different sectors. I'm sure he, in part, was molded by Chuck Whistler himself, as he was one of his protégés. But it's just remarkable. David doesn't know how to say no, but he's one of those people who says yes and then really over-delivers. And he always does it in a way that deflects credit and attention away from himself and toward others. And so the first thing that comes to mind about his character is selfless and talent. And his contributions to this community, again, in almost every sector, are simply legion.
He's volunteered from the Pan Am Games to Lilly Endowment, Governor's Educational Roundtable, CICP, Board of Wabash, and the State Board of Education. You know, a key example, in my opinion, would be his outstanding service when the governor of the state of Indiana asked him to leave LDI on a temporary basis, and he became Mitch Daniels' senior policy advisor for education and employee working in the areas of workforce development, higher education, and K-12 education.
When people see Indiana now as a leader in education reform, they may think it happened suddenly or overnight. That wasn't right. It was years in the making, and it was only in 2011 when we really got the planets aligned to effect the biggest of those changes. But I can trace almost every one of them: the expansion of charter schools, the expansion of choice, the proper limitation of collective bargaining and liberation of school leadership that entailed, and higher teacher quality and accountability standards. I can trace all those to work David Shane was doing here a few years before. And some of it got done through the Department of Education. Most of it came to fruition in the legislation of 2011, but it had Shane's fingerprints all over it.
Well, I don't know anybody who is more enthusiastic, more passionate, more committed to improving educational outcomes, particularly for the most disadvantaged members of our community, than David Shane. He has been doing this work not just for years, but for multiple decades, doggedly, determinedly, quietly. I mean, he is involved really in all of the major things that have been happening in education reform, both at the city level and at the state level. And he just has such a thirst for knowledge about this topic. He just cares so much about it. He's so interested in it. He's always reading everything. He wants to know everything. He's just been a phenomenal leader for our community.
He also, at LDI, his employer, has been instrumental in helping us create and guide Connexus Indiana, which is aimed at helping upskill educational attainment for middle-skilled workers. So enormous programs all around the state. David has been as much an author as anybody in those programs.
In the early 90s, we had a computer enterprise software completely blow up, which just prejudiced all relationships with our customers. And Dave dove into that hook, line, and sinker, and helped us not only weather the storm. It did last too long, but we ended up not only surviving out of it, but actually built a stronger relationship with our customers, and are currently enjoying really a preference in one of our business units markets because we're easy to do business with, and Dave was a big part of that.
I do remember one specific instance when the city was working with the University of Indianapolis and their CEL program to bring a large Gates grant to Indianapolis, and we were working through putting together the proposal, And David just spent, I think must have been all night rewriting the proposal just because he cared so much about it. He had, of course, his day job that he had to devote a lot of time to, but he cared so much about this issue that he stayed up all night rewriting this Gates Foundation proposal, and it just was such a striking moment for me as a young person getting involved in this work, that he cared so much that he was willing to put that much energy into something that wasn't for his organization or for him, but he thought would benefit the community.
It'd be hard to name a good cause that David Shane hadn't been associated with one time or another in his career. One often wonders how he found any time to practice law or make a living. But I always think first and foremost of education. He's been a thought leader, an innovator, an action-oriented citizen, and he's put some time into public service too. And if Indianapolis is now seen, and it is, as a center of progressive thought in education and education reform, you can trace a lot of that back to David Shane.
Well, what a great video. What a great tribute, David. David, if you would come to the stage, and Mayor, and while they're up here, I want to, certainly you can see the similarities between Chuck Whistler and David Shane, and you might hear a little bit the connection, the stronger connection between them. But I have to give you my own personal story. After the Whistler Award Committee had made its decision, and I called David, and I said, you know, David, Gypsy has this Whistler Award that we give out every year. And he said, oh no, I know all about it, it's great. And then he proceeded to talk for 5 minutes about Chuck Whistler, and I kept trying to intervene here and say, David, I'm trying to see if you'll accept the award. Indeed, Mark Miles, that's what kind of selfless individual and leader Dave Shane is. So, Mayor.
Well, this is indeed a special award, as we all know, and it is, David, it is an honor to present you with this Chuck Whistler Award. He has long demonstrated a commitment to this community, to the state of Indiana, really. Particularly, I can look at the audience, a lot of education leaders here are right here this morning. And I think he's made a tremendous effort in that regard that has made so much positive difference in not just the city of Indianapolis, but the state of Indiana. I think the governor got it right on. We said you can trace so much of what is happening right now, where Indianapolis and the state of Indiana are leading the way in so many areas. And a lot of that can be traced back to what David has been doing for a long time, because even though it seems like some things happen overnight, they really don't. Somebody has to keep pushing, improving the ideas, advocating, and so forth. And so David has been doing that visionary, enthusiastic leadership on so many fronts, and our city is so much better for it. So it's really my honor today to present the Chuck Whistler Award to David Shane.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your leadership. Thanks to all of you for getting up too early in the morning, being here, and for supporting Gypsy, and for doing everything all of you do for our great city. Thanks to Gypsy for just being there. Sometimes quiet, sometimes active, but it's always focused on solving the opportunities and the problems that we have as a city. Thanks to those who lost their mind for a minute and nominated me for all they've already done and will continue to do. And then you're looking at a guy who has 35 years of working for wonderful employers, Baker & Daniels, Bakery Baker & Daniels, and Lacey Diversified Industries. The lawyers are old friends and new friends, and wonderful people. people. It's a great law firm. And I benefited from 20 years of the firm saying, yes, it's great if you do that. They were enabling and supporting of civic work, in part under Chuck's leadership, but always. And I could not have had a better second act, as it were, for civic service than LDI, because Andre, his sister Margot, rest her soul, all the family and the employees of LDI have been nothing but supportive of the efforts that that company and that family have been contributors to the civic fabric for the better part of this, well, now over a century. And I'm just grateful to both Baker and Daniels and LDI for giving me the opportunity to spend time on the civic front. I need to say a thank you to friends. All of you are friends in one way or the other. Some of the friends, some of them are in the room, you know who you are still subject to mutual non-disclosure agreements over the years, and I'm grateful you're still honoring those. Others are in the category of just good friends and great citizens, but it is important to understand that you reflect where you come from. If you come from a place like Indianapolis where we're all friends and we all work together, it's a lot easier to do that kind of work. And then thanks for letting me have more. But I always get choked up when I think of Ann. You know, she, in addition to raising 2 children and doing more than I've done in the community, if I was having to argue a case for her being a saint, I'd simply rest my case with the fact that for the better part of the decade, Steve Goldsmith was her day job and I was her night job. Obviously you agree. And then let me talk for just a second about Chuck Whistler. I knew him for 7 years, worked for him for 6 directly, and would echo everything Steve Terry, well, everything everybody said in the video. The day after Murray called, I got up and looked in the mirror channeled Lloyd Benson at me and said, "Shane, you knew Whistler and you're no Whistler." He was an amazing man in all the ways that the video reflected, a true servant leader. He could be powerful when he needed to be, but his core was caring. I can remember a number of Saturday mornings early, and Chuck would come in with the trail of young Cub Scouts behind him, sometimes in their slickers, sometimes in their work gear. And he put them in the partners conference room. We're back in that day, no associate, that's where I was ever could even go in the partners conference room. But he'd take the Cub Scouts in there, and it was sort of a first contact with how you save lives, because that's what he was doing, and he cared enough to do that, even at that level. He'd be very happy, I think I can speak knowing him, he'd be very happy with where the city is now, with all the things that have happened since his untimely death, through all the good mayors we've had, and with all the people that have been working together. And then let me just spend 1 minute on education. I was talking with Helene Cross earlier. She's a good example. Gene Zinker, John Neighbors, there are many of you in the room that could just as easily be standing here talking about this, and more importantly, have actually been doing it. Saving lives, one at a time. Education is an area that used to be optional, no longer is. And it used to be one we could think about statistically, but now, at least from my humble notion, we have to think about it as one life at a time. And at that level, it becomes a moral issue. And we've got to just keep pushing at it. Chuck would say it's a perfect time for having clear eyes, not blaming, but not faking, and getting on with the business of figuring out where the future needs to be to help continue to save the lives of people and thus the lives of the community. It's one of those things that fits the phrase, if you can get it done in your lifetime, it's not worth working on. And having failed at it for 25 years, I'm sure the work will outlast me. It's just the future, and I'm just grateful to everybody for continuing to do that kind of work. Now, Chuck taught me one other thing. Well, he taught me many things, but among them, he did this indirectly, but one day a junior partner, Chuck and I were working on a project. I handed in what I consider to be an absolutely brilliant memorandum on the law and the facts, and the junior partner called me into his office and pulled out a white piece of paper, took out a pencil, we used those in those days, and he put a dot on the piece of paper. He said, "David, what is that?" And I said, "It's a dot." And he said, "No, it's not. It's a period. It's intended to bring an end to your words. Use it." So with thanks for everything you're doing and have done and will continue to do for our wonderful home, thank you very much.